Yes, that's right. I'm riding another one of Norman's classic motorcycles. This time it's a Honda CB750F, a 1980 model. Here's a peek at the bike in the flesh. And yes, we're headed up to Jerry's Cafe again for this test ride. This is Honda's first 4-valve 4-cylinder, and it came in the 900 variant as well. By this time the Z Kawasaki was far more popular as a performance bike. It's an engine that likes revs, 77 horsepower at 9,000 revs, and 57 foot-pound of torque at 8,000 revs. And it's not particularly light at 230 kilos dry. The 900 was a more popular choice at the time because of the power to weight ratio. Back in the day, I owned a 1982 model. This was an F2 with the fairing. I did about 50,000 kilometres on this bike, with many 1,000k day trips down to Melbourne. It's incredible to think that this bike is now 43 years old. It really doesn't seem that long ago that I was riding my F2 750. But surprisingly, this bike is still good to ride. The suspension's compliant. Sure, the rear shocks are reasonably short travel, but they handle the bumps almost as well as my NC Honda. Even in the day, the front end was renowned for being a little bit flexible, and I had a fork brace on mine, which helped quite a lot. But on this particular example, I'm not feeling that. But of course, I'm only going at speed limits. Norman is riding his 1973 model CB750 today. And while that is a nice bike to ride, you can certainly feel the difference in those 7 years riding the CB750F. Wendy's riding her trusty 500X and she's filming me. I have to admit, I really love the feel of a 4-cylinder engine. They're so smooth and tractable. The sitting position is a bit more cramped in the legs, but I'm still sitting reasonably upright. This was before the race replica type bikes came onto the market, and Honda called this a super sport. I'm 190 centimetres. You can see my knees are a bit more than 90 degrees bent. And I'm just leaning forward just a little bit, which is just enough to make it comfortable. Oh, and by the way, it can get up and go when you open up the throttle. As I've said on previous reviews, motorcycles should be judged on how they make you feel, not what the performance specs say. And this is a very natural feeling riding bike. With its narrow tyres, it's very easy to just flick around into the corners. The suspension's compliant. The clutch is not particularly light, but it's not heavy either. And the gearbox is just beautiful and smooth, as you'd expect from a Japanese bike. Norman bought this bike as boxes of bits, which I guess is always a bit of a challenge, and there were many surprises along the way as the bike was reassembled. And yes, I can hear you saying, I've never seen a purple 750F before. That's because the previous owner decided that this would be a nice colour. And I have to admit that the colour is growing on me. I think this is probably Norman's least original looking bike. If you were one of those people that were very finicky about originality, you would probably hate this machine. But this bike's for riding, not for looking at in a garage. And did I mention it can get up and go? It's like a smooth pussycat to ride until you get past about 6,500 revs, and then it really starts to jump. But while it performs well at those upper rev limits, if you're riding it like a normal bike, you can feel the lack of torque if you're riding it around, 4,000 to 5,000 revs. And I'm going up Bumble Hill at the moment, and while it's performing well, you can feel its slight limpness. Sure, I could knock it back a gear and ride it in its full power bound, but this bike is newly reconditioned. It's not mine, and so I'm not going to be doing that. Besides, I'm already going fast enough to enjoy this curvy road. I love the look and the sound of an air-cooled inline four-cylinder. It just looks like a real motorcycle to me. We've arrived at Jerry's Cafe for breakfast. It's the end of autumn and it's really quite cool at about 7 degrees C. It's 8:30, not a huge crowd here yet, but I'm sure that'll change as the day warms up.
Hey Delmore.
This model came with twin discs but only single piston calipers. My 82 model had twin pistons, but these work surprisingly well. The rear brake has a huge disc and works better than most modern bikes. Instead of the old cable operated slides, these have got CV carburetors. I remember my F2 having a very uncomfortable seat. This seat's been recovered and it's got quite a lot of nice padding.
Delmore needs his treats. And check. Yeah.
Delmore is a resident welcoming committee, and so he gets a treat. This is a nice place to be. It's relatively slim and it's got large, easy to read gauges, unlike my NC Honda with its useless LCD screen. Again, I've got to thank Norman for allowing me to ride one of his marvellous bikes. And here he is in person.
He knows us. He comes running as soon as he sees us drive in.
Now that we're full of bacon and egg rolls and coffee, it's time to head off back to home. I'm not sure there'd be a better way to spend a Sunday morning. There are a lot more bikes here now, and even a couple of Massey Ferguson tractors have turned up. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the handling of this bike. Going down through the twisties on Bumble Hill, it's nice and neutral. Again, with those nice skinny tyres, it's easy to flick into the corners and accelerate out. One thing I haven't mentioned yet is how tractable the engine is. You can ride it at 40 kilometres an hour in 5th gear, which is top, and then just accelerate away. On the way home, we stop at a classic motorcycle club day ride meet. And there are lots of Honda 4s here, 900s, 750s, even a 354. And they vary in condition from mint to original looking, and then to rat. The last bit of twisty road, and we're only in minutes from home. If you follow my motorcycle channel, you'll know that I've reviewed a number of Norman's classic bikes now. Every one of them have been a joy to ride. Every one of them have their own characteristics, and a few have the odd failing like poor brakes. But I can't help wondering why we buy new bikes when there are so many fantastic older bikes to ride. In Australia, anything over 30 years old is regarded as a classic, and you can register it as a classic bike with classic rego and far cheaper insurance. It makes a much better proposition for bike ownership and riding. And because these bikes make you really feel alive, why would you go out and buy a brand new bike with all these tricky electronics on them that you really don't need? I'm sure that part of the reason is because of the fact that we believe the marketing hype that newer is always better. And also, if you buy a new bike, I guess you're more likely to have a more reliable machine. But a reconditioned 40-year-old bike is every bit as reliable as a new bike. And if I was looking to buy another bike, it would certainly be something in this category. Anyway, this is my take on the 750F. Thanks for watching.